Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. Calvin Lowe from PEACEquity. Thank you for taking your time to view this webinar as I'm excited to present this wonderful investment opportunity in South Salt Lake City. Many people have asked me, what is a promising market for investment? It's not always the one that's hot or trending the most. In fact, the best market is the one that you know well. As Peggy and I we mainly invest outside of our home state of California. We really rely on people who are deeply familiar with their respective markets. One such expert is Brian Briscoe from Streamline Capital. We partnered with Brian on a beautiful investment property last year called the Eleanor Rigby in downtown Salt Lake City. And we're excited to collaborate with Brian on this South Salt Lake City portfolio. I consider Brian as a leader in the multi-apartment investing world. He is a native of Utah and a graduate of the University of Utah. And this man lives and breathes Salt Lake City. So welcome, Brian. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks, Calvin. I very much appreciate it. And very happy to partner with you and Peggy again. This is going to be, I think this is going to be a really good opportunity.
Yeah, we're really excited about it. So why don't I just share my screen? We'll put the slides up and you can take it away. Let's see.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I mean the Eleanor Rigby, we were talking about that one. Talking about Salt Lake City, I went to the University of Utah, which is the campus is about 2 miles from the Eleanor Rigby. But the way I would drive home every day put me on First South, which is, I was within a half block of the Eleanor Rigby every single day, coming home on my commute, from the University of Utah campus. So, anyway, that's that one. Salt Lake City, it's definitely my favorite city. I love a lot of the things that are happening there. And like you said, I grew up there, so it's the market that I know. But anyway,
yeah, it's great because we were
yeah.
there last week and you showed us around, and Peggy and I just love the area. So thanks for doing that.
Yeah. And I showed you the Delta Center, and I said, if, Utah gets, a hockey team, they're going to renovate it. Well, that announcement was actually made Monday morning.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, Salt Lake City is going to get the Arizona Coyote hockey team moving up. So one of those things, you saw the Delta Center, it's where the Jazz have been playing for a good 20, 25 years. And between the state and the Smith Entertainment Group, they're going to put about $1 billion into renovations into downtown Salt Lake just on that one project. So, yeah. So,
fantastic.
Anyway, as much as I would love to talk about that, we're here to talk about the Salt Lake portfolio. So let's do that. There's a couple of disclaimers. These are in the pitch deck. I'm not going to read them to everybody. Basically, what I'm going to say is, we do everything we can to make sure we're providing accurate information, and we do everything we can to make sure that we're, putting forth some responsible projections. But we are projecting what's going to happen in the future here. So, as much as we are trying to do our best, there is a lot of risk in this, and each person has to make their own decision whether or not that risk is worth the potential rewards. So that's essentially summing up those two slides. But here's what we're going to go over today. Investment highlights, the property overview, financial summary, market management team, and then really on the contact information side, that's also going to be kind of how to invest as well. So next slide, please. All right, one more. So this is a portfolio, and there's a couple of things that I want to explain about this. We're buying a 24 unit and a 56 unit together. Both together are 80 units. And when you look in multifamily, there's a point somewhere around 70 to 80 units where things are more efficient. It's easier to manage. And that's because they're large enough to afford good on-site management. And so we have a 56 unit that by itself would be a little inefficient to manage. And we have a 24 unit that by itself would be very inefficient to manage. So one of the bonuses or one of the benefits of putting these two together as a single portfolio is the management becomes a lot more efficient. And because they're in close proximity, they're about 1.2 miles from each other. And Calvin, you drove it with us
Yeah,
last Friday. It was like a what, a 3-minute drive
very
between the
short.
two?
Yeah, you could walk
And
between the two.
yeah, I mean, yeah, 15-minute walk, but really, you do have to make a left turn on a fairly busy road coming out of White Pines, but that could be half of your commute time between the two. But long story short, we have two properties, 24 unit, 56 unit, 80 together. We're going to manage them as a portfolio. Um, and the other part about this is where they are located. Salt Lake City is experiencing a lot of growth right now, and they are projected to continue to grow faster than just about any other city in the nation. And when you start looking at numbers, we have a slide later, but I'm going to give you a little glimpse. Wall Street Journal last week put a report out saying Salt Lake City had the hottest job market. It used the word, bucking the trend. There's a very active tech scene where in other parts of the nation, tech's not doing well, but in Salt Lake, the tech scene is thriving. So they're bucking the trend in a lot of ways. But if you look at the direction Salt Lake City is growing, um, directly to the east of Salt Lake City, you have mountains. Directly to the north of Salt Lake City, you have a mountain. So you look at that downtown corridor. There's really only, two directions it can go. And you have I-15 that's going straight south. You have State Street that's going straight. Actually, hit the next slide. I think we have the map on the next slide. You have I-15 and, you can see I-15 on the map. State Street is that straight line right down the middle. I-15 is that line, just to the left. But the growth from downtown Salt Lake is going right down that corridor. So basically from that star that is downtown, right down that State Street, all the way down. And that's where all the growth in Salt Lake, that's where the new development in Salt Lake is happening. So when we look at the portfolio, we're getting two properties in close proximity. We're going to be able to manage them slightly better, and they are very much in that path of progress. And Calvin, you can attest to this. When you drive through that area, there's a lot of buildings, commercial, retail, industrial. I mean, there's just a lot of buildings that have been renovated, and there's also a lot of new buildings going in right now.
Yeah,
So
a lot of growth that's going in that area. Looks
yeah.
great.
So one thing that I love about this is this area 5, 8, 10 years from now is going to be much better than it currently is, and it's already a decent area. Looking at where we're at, we're just south of the downtown area, which puts people in a really good, if you're working downtown, puts them close to these big employment centers. My daughter lives just north of Blair Street, just off this map to the left. But my daughter lives just north of that, and she works downtown, and it's about an 8 to 10 minute drive for her. So it's a really nice spot if you're working downtown or in any of the major employment centers in the area. So anyway, 1.2 miles is what we said on the slide, so that's probably accurate because I did look that up before I put it on the slide. And then they're also super close to both freeways. That freeway that's going from right to left or left to right, that's I-80. And just if you're looking at the middle graphic, and I think Calvin on the recording, it's going to be your pointer, not mine. But if you take the top left corner of that red square and you go just to the left and slightly up, that's right there where the S in Salt Lake there, right there. That's where I-80 and I-15 come together. Okay, two major freeways. I-15 starts in San Diego and goes all the way up into Canada. I-80 is San Francisco to Pennsylvania. But anyway, two major freeways come together right there. And this property is within 5 minutes of getting on both freeways, which gives you access to basically everything in Salt Lake pretty quickly. All right. So that's location. That's a little bit about the portfolio. Let's go to the next slide and go a little bit more into it. So total purchase price 17.8 million. Depending on where you're used to investing, this is 222,000 a door. It's average price right now in Salt Lake is ballpark 230, around 230,000 per unit. We are getting this slightly below the market pricing, and both units are in amazing condition. We're gonna make them better, but we're getting it at a decent price. 80 units. Our hold time is 7 to 10 years, and the reason I like a 7 to 10 year hold time is because it gives us time. I think the most powerful thing in real estate investing is the time factor itself. So what does 7 to 10 years buy us? I will, 100% acknowledge that if you look theoretically, the way to make the most money in multifamily is to buy a value add apartment, put a lot of money into it, essentially flip it. And, in the next 2 to 3 years, turn around and sell it. That's where you maximize your returns. All right. Theoretically, if you could keep on doing that over and over and over again, that would be the best way to invest in real estate. But you end up with market downturns like we're seeing right now, where every once in a while that method of investing doesn't work and people lose money, and there's a lot of people that are losing money right now. Speaking of that, the owners of White Pines are actually losing money on this transaction, right? So the downside with that 2 to 3 year hold is it works wonderfully when the market cooperates. When the market churns, there's a little bit more volatility and a lot more risk. Why I like 7 to 10 years is it gives us time. If there is a market downturn, typically the downturns last for about 2 years. We're able to weather storms with a 7 to 10 year hold. And even if the downturn happens towards the end of that 7 to 10 years, we've held the property long enough that we're still going to make decent returns. Okay. So the way I look at the 7 to 10 year hold model is there is a lot less risk, but you can still make solid returns. All right. Now, equity for the property, we'll go into more detail on a later screen in the finance section, but we're going to need about 7.8 million in equity. In a later slide, we'll tell you exactly where all that money's going. All right. Next slide, please. All right. So the way we're doing this for our investors is we're splitting it up into Class A and Class B shares. All right. Class A shares are going to have a higher preferred return and a much more enticing split for investors. However, minimum investment is 250,000. So, why do we put this out there? If people are able to invest larger amounts, we want to incentivize them, give them a little bit more to invest a larger amount. All right. Class B shares, minimum investment is 50,000, 6% preferred return with a 75-25 split. And Calvin, do you think we need to go into preferred returns, explain exactly what that is?
Yeah, I probably should, because some of my investors will be first-time investors.
Okay. So what a preferred return is it basically means, actually, let me explain the split first, and then I'll go to the preferred return. When you look at an 80-20 split or a 75-25 split, that's how we are distributing the profits. Okay. So the investors collectively, with Class A shares are getting 80% of the profits. And then the people that are putting the deal together and operating the deal, like Calvin and I, we are sharing that 20%. So the people who are contributing money as limited partners are splitting 80% of the profits, and the general partners are splitting 20% of the profits. Okay. So that's what that split is. And what the preferred return is it delays that split a little bit. Basically, what we are doing is we are giving 100% of the returns to the passive investors until we have reached that 8% mark. Or in the case of the Class B shares, until we have reached that 6% mark. Okay. So what does that mean? It means we don't make money until we have given you at least an 8% return on investment for Class A shareholders and at least a 6% return on investment for Class B shareholders. So it front loads the return to the investors, and it basically pushes our profits until the back end. All right, which incentivizes us to incentivizes us to make sure that, we're hitting those numbers. Because if we don't hit those numbers, like I said, we're not making a lot of money. All right, so 8% preferred return. Once we hit that 8% mark, then we start splitting every dollar after that 80-20, or in the Class B shares 75-25. So did I explain that well enough?
Yeah, I think so. That's pretty straightforward.
Awesome. All right, let's go to the next slide and we'll look at what the numbers look like. So for Class A shares, these numbers are based on a 10-year hold. I'll explain, the 7 to 10 philosophy, but, projected equity multiple 2.72, which means you take the amount of money that you have invested, you multiply it by 2.72, and that is what we are returning to you throughout the life of the investment. So in this case, $250,000 invested over 10 years, we're going to return $680,000. Okay. That averages out to 17.2%. And remember, these are projected returns with an internal rate of return of about 14%. Okay. Cash on cash is the money that's distributed out of the operations. When we look at the average annual returns and the internal rate of returns, that includes the refinance proceeds, and that includes proceeds at sale. So cash on cash is a number that comes off of the property, from the rents received, income minus expenses equals the profit, and that gets distributed. But the proceeds from the refinances and sales are in addition to that, and that's in the average annual return number. All right, next slide. All right, Class B shares, the numbers aren't that far off. Instead of a 2.7 multiple, we're giving a 2.6. Instead of a 17% average annual return, we're giving a 16% average annual return. So the numbers are fairly close. Just for the people that can invest a little bit more, it gives them a little bit more safety with that higher pref and a little bit more share of the upside. But these are still solid numbers. All right, perfect. Sources and uses. This is where the money is coming from, where the money is going. So the sources of funds, there's three sources. Source 1 and 2 are from the two loans. We're getting a loan on each property. So a different loan on each property, and we're expecting to get about $12.3 million from the two different lenders. And then roughly $7.8 million in equity from all of the investors combined. All right. Now below you'll see the uses of funds. The combined purchase price is the vast majority of that. So what stays with the property, $17.8 million is the purchase price. We're going to put $800,000 into our capital expenses or our renovations, and $80,000 is in reserves. So that money is all essentially staying with the property, rounding up approximately 19 million. And then, we do have a large financing fee. I'll talk about that when we get to the debt slide. Just over $500,000 in financing fee. We're expecting about $300,000 to $400,000 in closing costs. And then our acquisition fee for putting all the stuff together and all the work that we have to do to get this done. We're doing a 2.5% acquisition fee, which is $445,000. All right. And then distributions. We're gonna make quarterly distributions, and yeah, that's essentially it on this slide. So let's go on to the next one. All right, one more, please. All right, so now I'm going to talk about each one of the properties individually. I got 3 slides on each property. White Pines, this is the larger of the two. It's the 56 unit. We already said that, these two properties are in a rapidly developing, I would say redeveloping area of Salt Lake City. Very conveniently located to, a lot of amenities, restaurants. Um, Salt Lake City's on a grid system, so, the streets are all, numbered like you'd see in a math class. 33rd South, this is on 35th South, but 33rd South, 2 blocks to the north, is one of the east-west streets that has a lot of businesses and other amenities. They have movie theater, they have restaurants. So they are very close to that. And they're also really close to the Sugar House area, which is a very kind of hip, modern kind of area with a lot of shops and stuff like that. So it is in a very desirable location. Now, the previous owners, like I said, are going to be losing money on this one. If you've been paying attention to what's going on in the multifamily arena, essentially what you see is anybody who bought a property in late 2021 or 2022 with a bridge loan, they're currently underwater, and that's exactly what happened with this. What a bridge loan is, it's you come in, the lender will come in, they'll finance the purchase of the property, and they'll finance a lot of the renovations. Okay. And when the market's going up, that leverage makes your returns pop. If you can get the lender to pay for everything and you're only paying 3 or 4% for that money, all of the upside is essentially coming to the investors. So, as long as the market cooperates, everything works well. But bridge loans are almost always variable rate. And so in March 2022, when the Fed started raising those rates, a lot of these things became, untenable. And essentially, they started doing the renovations, and their debt service got to be excessive. And the property value essentially dropped. So they are going to lose approximately $1 million on this transaction. We're buying it at 13. I think their all-in price is somewhere in the high 13s. So a little less than $1 million is the numbers. So that's kind of the narrative behind this, and why the sellers are selling right now. But the other thing we noticed is they didn't quite finish their value add plan. I mean, they did a lot of really nice things at the property. If when you have time and you're looking at this deck, zoom in, you can see those are brand new doors. They all have like the 6-panel windows, really beautiful doors. The numbering, the lighting on the exterior is all really nice. The interiors look amazing. We have some pictures of that 2 slides from now. But, also when you start looking at other things, like the deck does not look amazing, and so there's a lot of things that we are going to basically do to finish what they started. So we're going to refinish the decks, the railings, the stairs. And when you go downstairs, by the way, it's very typical in Utah to have basements. I know in a lot of other areas in the world, Southern California, I don't think there's a lot of basements there, but it's very typical in Utah to have basements. And so, if you're looking at that picture on the lower right, when you walk down the stairs to the basement units, the concrete walls on the side, need a lot of repair work on them. So we're going to do that. Okay. We're going to take care of we're going to put new decking down. We're going to make the railings, the stairs, and the concrete look really, really nice. Okay. And yep, Calvin's pointing to that with the mouse there. We're also going to add some amenities. Interesting, this property used to have a pool. Pools don't typically do well at apartment complexes in Salt Lake just because there's 3 months out of the year where you can use them. And so one of the previous owners basically filled in the pool, poured concrete over it, and put a playground on top, right? So I didn't think it looked safe. Calvin actually made me laugh when we were at the property last week. He wanted to keep it in there because it keeps doctors in business, is what he said.
Out of humor.
But obviously joking. But yeah, we're gonna remove that old pool deck, which has no reason to be there if there's not a pool, and we're gonna add a lot of amenities. We have a bid for pergola, a bunch of benches, off-leash dog park, all of that stuff, and then a custom-built gas grill in the area. So we're going to add some amenities, and we're going to do some other exterior repairs. especially to the parking area. We don't have any good pictures of the parking area, but the asphalt does need a lot of work. And then the other thing, this is actually going to be something that's a revenue booster, is we're going to add additional storage lockers for the residents, and we're going to charge them for it. So it will add to our costs, but it's also going to add to our revenue. So next slide, please. All right. So as far as, in addition to what I mentioned, some of the value adds is they haven't been super aggressive at charging for other things. If you look at their financials, they haven't been charging a whole lot for the storage units that they do have. They have 25 storage units. And they're charging a very low rate for those, not for those. And then pet fees, it's a very pet friendly place right now. They have, a lot of these dog stations with the little pet waste bags. But they only have 5 people in the entire complex that are paying pet rent, right? So we're going to, essentially enforce the pet rent around the board. And we estimate that, these two things together are going to add about $30,000 to our revenue. All right. Next slide, please. And these are the pictures. So you can see it overall. It looks good right now. If you look at let's see, top row, second from the left picture, that one is one of the only decks that has been redone. So, we want to make everything else essentially look like that. Right now, they don't. And then the interiors, everything's been done with the exact same finishes, exact same materials, and they're all in really good condition. So that's White Pines.
Yeah, I thought it
All right,
was.
let's go next.
Yeah, I thought it was a beautiful place when we toured it, and looked in pretty good shape, but needed some improvements. But overall, looks great.
Yeah. And something I mentioned to the group that was out with us is this is a 60s build, so, we are going to make it look nice and we're going to maintain it, but, one thing with 60s builds is you just got to find a spot where you say, we're done. This is, you can always put more and more and more money into something of this, but we're going to keep this and we're going to operate it as a B-class apartment. So, we're going to do the upgrades that we talked about, and then we're going to maintain that level. We're not going to push the envelope. We're going to maintain a B-class apartment look and feel. And, largely this area is a B-class area, and anything more than that, I think would be wasting money. But I think we have a pretty good budget, pretty good plan. About $600,000 is what we're budgeting here, and every penny of that's going to exterior and amenities. So, all right, Blair Street. Okay, so this one, when we got this under contract, we were anticipating having to put a lot of money into the interiors, in addition to the exteriors. And once again, we want to keep this at a B class level with all of our finishes and everything. And when we got into the interiors, we realized that they were all in really good condition. They were probably, maybe a little bit lower than what we would want to get, but it didn't really make sense to spend $12,000 per unit on interior repairs to lift the level that much. So, I think the interiors were still sitting at kind of a B to B minus as far as what the finishes look like, but in very good condition. And then we're on this one, mainly we're going to do some exterior work. All right. Do some extra landscaping. Overall, it's a beautiful property in great condition. And then the other thing that is really on the docket is to upgrade the laundry facility. All right, we want an app-based laundry. Right now, it's coin operated, and it's only $1.25 per load. And so, between the app base, and raising the price a little bit, we should be able to increase that line of income as well. So, next slide. All right. So with laundry income, we're anticipating $3,000 to $5,000 more in income just by, installing the app-based. Looking at the numbers, it looks like most people aren't using, how much they're gaining in their revenue. It looks like most people in the apartments aren't actually using this laundry facility, right? I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with Coinbase and ease of use. Um, you know, I don't carry, $10, $15 worth of quarters in my pocket, and neither does anybody else. With utility income, the owners actually just bumped this up for us when we started looking at the property. We were thinking that they were losing money on the utility bill back. As of April 1st, 2 weeks ago, the owner actually bumped it from $60 per unit to 80 per unit. So the nice part is, most of that's been done for us already, and we'll reap a lot of the benefits. And then there's a couple of other income items that we can add to it as well. Primarily, I think the common area maintenance fees. Most other properties in the area have common area maintenance, so we can add some other income item lines on this one. Just basically bringing things up to market rate. We should be able to increase revenue between $10,000 and $20,000 a year. So, all right, next slide, please. All right. On the right, you see the pictures, and every unit looks about like that, same finishes throughout, but it does already look nice. And then on the left side, you can see the now versus later. We're essentially taking the asphalt shingles off, putting some metal, sheet metal plate, but very decorative, very nice looking, and giving the entire apartment complex a paint job. So should look a lot better when we're done. And we're working with a design team and a general contractor that have worked together many times before in the past. So we should we should be able to execute on that one pretty easy.
Yeah, I'm
All right.
excited how the exterior is going to look, the plant. And, seeing it in person for the first time, I know how you love the Mansur roast, but it's going to look much better.
I've never really liked mansard roofs. Even when I was a kid, it's just like, why are the shingles on the side of the house? That's dumb. Um, but I did find out why mansard roofs came into existence, and it was all over property taxes.
Mm.
Um, this was I did look this up recently, but the history of it is it starts in Paris, France, and essentially they had a rule on property taxes where the square footage or the amount of units that a property had below the roof level is what they would charge, that what would they would base the property taxes off.
Mm.
And so, some really smart developers just essentially lowered the roof down to where the top story was below the roof level, right? And so that's why. And all of a sudden, it crossed the ocean, came over to the US, and a lot of people were doing that. So, um, anyway, let's go to next slide and one more, and we'll hit the finances. Now, as far as on a webinar where people are looking at this on a screen, a small screen potentially, you might not be able to dive into these numbers, but essentially, we're looking at gradually raising the prices, gradually raising the income. When you look at, year one, we're expecting 1.4 million in total income on both properties together. Year two, 1.5, year three, 1.6. In the apartment world, these are very moderate increases to the income lines. So I think we're doing a fair job at making it as realistic as possible. All right, next slide, please. All right, now these are the expenses as well, and a lot of people, to what Calvin said at the beginning, the market is the best one to invest. Something that's really unique about Salt Lake City is the average expense ratio is in the 30s, and so when you look at properties all over the place, our property taxes are generally low, insurance is generally low, but we're taking these operating expenses directly off of 3 years worth of financial history from the current owners. And we're doing the same thing as we're just, dialing these up every single year. So anyway, I'll let everybody dive into the financials as much as they want. But in essence, the almost bottom line is what we expect to be able to return to investors from cash flows. And then we have a refinance that we're planning around the 5-year mark, and a refinance we're planning around the 10-year mark. So next slide, please. Excuse me, a sale at the 10-year mark. All right, now talking about financing specifically. 2 different loans, 2 different properties. One on Blair Street, we're expecting to get about, $2.75 million. On that one, on White Pines, we're expecting to get $9.5 million. All right. We may get a little bit more, we may get a little bit less. But that's the expectation. Interest rate on Blair Street, we've locked already at 6.2. White Pines, we have not locked yet. That'll be right before we close. So there's a little bit of, who knows what the interest rate is going to be, but we're modeling 6.3 to 6.5. When I put the slide deck together, it would have been closer to 6.3. Right now, with where rates are, it'd be closer to 6.5. All right. Both of these loans are 5-year loans. And really what we're looking to do is, kind of find an opportune time to refinance. Do we have to wait until the end of 5 years, like the financial model says, to do the refinance? No, we don't. Okay. What most people are predicting, with interest rates is they'll stay roughly at the same spot until at least the end of 2024 and into 2025. And the Fed, when you look at where they think rates are going to be, it's going to be 2 to 3 years from now. They're expecting rates to be a couple percentage points lower than they are right now. Okay, so the idea is, we're buying these at a decent price. We're buying these, at a discount compared to what you could have bought these for 2 or 3 years ago. We are getting a slightly higher rate, but if and when rates go down, we'll refinance this, get into better, more attractive debt. And at lower interest rates, we're also going to be able to get, higher proceeds on these loans. So somewhere in that 3 to 5 year mark, we're going to be, paying very close attention to what these property valuations look like, to what interest rates look like. And, when we think we have, the best time, we'll refinance the properties. Okay. Since they are 2 different loans, we do have some flexibility. We could refinance both at different times if we need to. I think that is going to end up helping us. If we have a better opportunity to refinance Blair Street first, we'll do that one. And quite honestly, with Blair Street coming in at like a 58% LTV, I think this is going to be more sensitive to interest rates. If interest rates come down, we'll be able to get a lot more proceeds out of this one, for lower debt service costs. So anyway, that's kind of it on financing and how that, like I said, how that affects the business plan. Both properties are going to have 5-year loans somewhere around the 3 to 5 year mark. We expect to be refinancing out of these loans and putting, hopefully a loan with a lower interest rate on it. If not, things are still going to work out if interest rates don't come down. I'm not too worried about that one. Essentially, in our business plan, we're looking at the property values going up about 4% per year, which is very low for Salt Lake City right now. But as long as property values go up about 4% per year, we should be able to make this a really good investment opportunity. If they don't average 4% per year, as long as they don't go down, we'll still make a good amount of money. It'll just be a little bit lower than projected. So anyway, that said, I think there we go. Now, speaking of returns, this is what we are projecting. And once again, we got 2 slides, one for the Class A shares. Remember, that was a minimum investment of $250. And so you can see that, year 1, 6,000, year 2, 8,000, the numbers are going to go up incrementally. Year 5, we have that refinance where we're putting a lot of money back on the streets or back into bank accounts, better said. And then year 6 through 10, we're operating the property again. You can see year 10, sale of the property, and we're distributing a whole lot of money. Okay. Now we talked about the preferred return. Actually, before we do that, just highlight once again, 250,000 invested is going to give about 680,000. That's in that box in the lower left. And then projected IRR and equity multiple are the same as we showed on the earlier screen. This just gives us actual numbers to put behind it. All right, let's go to the next slide. This is for Class B shares, and we based this, I based the last slide off of a $250,000 investment because that's the minimum investment for that tier. This one's based off of a $100,000 investment because the numbers are just a lot easier, So year 1, 2,500, which as a percentage is 2.5. All right. And if you recall, we're paying out a 6% preferred return. Essentially, what we're doing with that is, year 1, 6% is what the preferred return would be, which would be $6,000. You can see that we're projected to be short year 1. Essentially, we're carrying that amount forward. All right, so we will catch up on the preferred return, and we anticipate catching up on that preferred return right at the refinance. Okay, so when we refinance, we'll catch up on that preferred return, and we'll push some of the principal back to the investors. And realistically, for the general partners, we start making money. We start getting into that 75-25 split at the refinance. So it makes a lot of sense for us to make sure that we do the refinance well. The better the numbers are at the refinance, the better we do, and the better everyone else does as well. So preferred return will carry forward for the years that we don't meet the 6%. And when we refinance, we'll catch everybody up to 6% or 8%, depending on their Class A or Class B shares. And at the sale, if we're lagging behind those numbers, when we sell, we'll also catch people up before the general partnership takes any money. So, all right, next slide, please. All right, now we're going to talk about the market. Here's some of the rankings. Last year, U.S. News and World Report, they do the annual best states. Last year they released the best states in April, so I'm expecting the 2024 rankings to come out soon. But last year they ranked Utah #1, and incidentally, 90% of the population of the state of Utah is in the greater Salt Lake City area. Ranked #3 for growth, best state to start a business according to somebody else. I mentioned Wall Street Journal last week said they have the hottest job market. On the right side, you see 2 of the 5 best performing cities. Milken reports. They survey all the cities in the nation and rank them. And the 3 cities in Utah that qualify as large cities are all in the top 20. Okay, you have Salt Lake City #4, Provo-Orem #5, and then the Ogden-Clearfield area just to the north came in at #18. So, Utah has 3 cities that qualify as large cities, and all 3 were in the top 10% in the nation, with 2 in the top 5. So, that kind of tells you where Utah sits right now, and where they're going. And you see on the lower left, they're also ranked #1 in economic outlook. That's forward-looking as well. So, we're expecting the state to continue to grow economically, and states that grow well economically, population usually follows. All right, next slide. And speaking of population, looking at the rightmost graphic, the median age in the state of Utah is the lowest in the country. All right, the average age across the entire country is 39 years old. The state of Utah is overall just under 31. Utah County is in the high 20s. But yeah, Salt Lake City is an average age of 33. What does that mean? There's a lot more younger people, and the more younger people you have in a city, the faster it's growing in the future. Okay. The older people are, the less likely they are to have kids. But when you look at the demographics in Salt Lake or along that Wasatch Front, that's the mountain range there. There are a lot more younger families and younger kids per capita than the rest of the nation. So we expect to see more natural population growth. That's from people having babies than in most of the other areas of the nation. And then we have a lot of net migration coming in as well. Median income in Salt Lake, 82,000. That'll buy you, a Big Mac in Southern California. But um, yeah, in Salt Lake City, Salt Lake's actually one of the more affordable metros. Median home price, I don't have this up here, is about half of what you would see in Orange County. Or I lived in San Diego County for 7 years, Orange County, San Diego County, Los Angeles counties, right? So, that's going to go a lot further. But looking at our rent prices, 82,000 being the median income, we're looking. I think the income qualification to rent at either one of our properties is about 55, right? So there's going to be a lot of people that can afford our properties. Unemployment well below the national average just speaks to the robust economy. All right, next slide. A lot of transportation hubs there. There's an inland port, that's being expanded. It's just to the west of Salt Lake City. There's now 2 international airports in the area. Salt Lake International has been there for a long time, but there's now an international airport in Provo that is growing fast to handle all the traffic. A lot of major freeways. I just saw another report that didn't make it into the slideshow, but the state of Utah, I think, was ranked 8th in the nation for roads and infrastructure. And then another thing, there's part of the reason why it's called the Crossroads of the West is because, the 2 intercontinental railroads actually come together just north of Salt Lake City. And so there's a lot of shipping, between the freeways and between the international or the intercontinental railroads. There's a lot of shipping that does come through Salt Lake, something a lot of people don't know. But I saw another stat last week that about, I think this number's high, but the stat I saw said 80% of commerce throughout the nation, at one point will flow through this area. But I think that's a little high. That's somebody texted it to me. I probably shouldn't even have mentioned that one in the webinar. So let's just ignore that. That could be bad information. All right, workforce. Looking at where we are located, downtown is where a lot of the work, where a lot of the jobs are. The Sugar House area, right along this I-80 corridor, there's a lot of large employers along there. And then all the way up and down that State Street I-15 corridor, a lot of jobs as well, especially when you get to between 45th and 53rd South, which is a couple of miles to the south of where we're at. So along that Highway 89, which is State Street, and I-15, just to the south of the map, there's another big, employment center, a lot of mid-rise or to the low high-rise buildings in that area too. So anyway, next slide. All right, higher education. So a lot of colleges in Salt Lake County as well. University of Utah, Westminster. My dad graduated from Westminster. I graduated from University of Utah. So did my oldest daughter. And my wife attended Salt Lake Community. So a lot of these are near and dear to our hearts. Actually, my wife graduated from Western Governors, which is on here as well. But that's beside the point. From the properties, you are less than a 15-minute drive to Westminster, University of Utah, and Salt Lake Community College. All right. So very convenient, whether people are working there or going to school there, very convenient access to the major universities in the area. All right. Now we'll go into the team. Um, One thing that I realized after putting this deck together, Calvin, is on the Eleanor Rigby, I put my track record on here. I didn't put that in here. That was an omission. I should have. But to date, I've been a general partner in over 1,500 units. That's 18 different properties. We've come full cycle on 9 of the 18, and number 10 should sell early next month. All right, that's set to sell in May. Um, the range of returns we've given to investors are 9 to 45. All right, and that's average annual return is what we're measuring there. So um, we had one deal that we put together that we projected 15 and we gave everybody 9. Everything else, we had another one. I'm talking kind of worst to best. We had another one where we projected 16 or 17 and we returned 15. Other than those two, we've pretty much hit our mark on everything else. One more in the high teens, several in the 20s, one or two in the 30s, and one in the 40s as far as average annual returns. So overall, I've been pretty good at generating returns. And the one where we hit 9%, just full disclosure, that was the very first one that I did as a sponsor. And probably tells you why you shouldn't invest with brand new sponsors. But anyway, that's kind of that's the that's the background. And once again, looking at what's in the bio, I am born and raised in Salt Lake, and that's I live in Idaho Falls. I'm a two-hour drive away from there. My Just a quick explanation on that one. My wife was living in the Salt Lake area when we met about 5 years ago. Her two sisters moved to Idaho Falls, and her parents moved to Idaho Falls. And then her brother moved to Idaho Falls. And so we are now in Idaho Falls, though I'm still a Utah at heart. All right.
Yeah.
And Calvin, I think the next slide is yours.
Yeah, just about peace equity. Peggy and I, founded this with a philosophy of family, peace of mind, and general wealth, and we really emphasize relationships built on respect and mutual trust akin to family ties. And our company's first letters of the acronym PEACE are the first names of our family's names: Peggy, Elizabeth, Austin, and Calvin. So we've managed a diverse investment portfolio spanning single and multifamily properties, 700 units over California, Arizona, Texas, and now Utah. So we actually do serve as capital raisers in various partnerships, and we educate people, as we're growing our expertise as active investors. And I'm a pediatric emergency medicine physician at a major children's hospital. And Peggy was a former graphic designer for a global brand identification products provider, and she brings her unique skills to our investment endeavors. So the last slide is just to contact us about this investment. If you have any questions, I know many of you will be or our first time investors, so we'd love to sit down and talk to you about this. This is the
Mhm.
QR code that goes to our investor portal through InvestNext. And I'll be also sending out a PDF file of this web deck, and there'll be a link to go to that area. This is the timeline. You can start, going in to do your soft commits. The legal documents should be ready by Friday, April 19th, and the funding window opens starting April 22nd with a closing date of May 19th. So yeah, that's about it. Just one more thing. This is a 506B opportunity. So if you're a sophisticated investor, just want to let you know there are only 35 spots for this opportunity. So it just shows that, like what Brian was saying, that this may close pretty fast. So, if you're interested, make an appointment with myself or Peggy. We can talk about your goals and get you into this opportunity. I think this is a great time to invest. One of the themes that I hear, Brian, I attended a national conference last week, is to keep your eyes on the horizon, because, yeah, the market's kind of weird and down right now, but 5 years from now, property values are going to go up. So I think What do you say, Brian? Don't wait to invest in.
Don't wait. Yeah,
Right?
invest in real estate and wait.
Here you go.
That's the key there. Time in the real estate market heals all wounds.
Right?
You
Yeah.
know, um, if you have a 10-year outlook in the real estate market, you don't need a physician to help. It's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
But where I think we are in the market, I'm assuming, most people on the call remember 2008, 2009. All right. Single family housing prices crashed, multifamily prices crashed. All right. Single family prices in the last 2 years have actually held pretty solid and in a lot of areas gone up. Multifamily, we're about 25% off of the peak in 2022. So where do I think we are in the market right now? I would say this would be like buying an investment property in late 2009, maybe early 2010, where you're right around that bottom. You don't know if you're bottoming out yet, but um, the fact that the current owner on White Pines is losing almost $1 million on this property, tells you kind of where we're at. The market peaked in 22 and it slid about 25% since its peak. Um, Realistically, we might still slide for a little bit, so if we were looking at a 6-month outlook, which is dumb with apartment investing, but if we were looking to sell this in 6 years, there's a fair chance that the property would be worth less than it is now. But, fast forward 7 to 10 years from now, I think this is going to be like, 2010 to 2017, where, we have a lot of good years of appreciation ahead of us. And if we hold it for 10 years, I think that's going to look a lot like the 2010 to 2020 run, which is why I say don't wait to buy. You just buy and wait.
Great. Fantastic. Thanks, Brian. And thanks to
You.
all of you for joining us out of your busy schedules, and hope to be talking to you real soon.
Awesome.
Thank you.